and what the significance of certain encounters were.
Oh my god, you actually had to go do some research for yourself. Or maybe there's...
In fact, I'd go so far as to say that between this and Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, I had more difficulty getting through Wukong's toughest challenges.
IGN and Screen Rant are fuming because they're stupid. I feel like they don't even have real gamers over at IGN or Screen Rant. They just have people that like to write articles. And then they'll like watch a trailer or two and like a little bit of like a couple of trailers and some gameplay. And then that's what they base the review on. Lacking in diversity and inclusion. Of what? Monkeys? The dumbest shit you could ever think of. They're not going to live that down, man. Screen Rant, they're not going to live that down. IGN said this game is more difficult than Elden Ring, must not have played DLC Radon. I'm gonna wait to gauge what the difficulty is like. How Black Myth Wukong developers' history of sexism is complicating its journey to the West. I mean, I'm literally in the game for 4 to 5 hours max. I don't even think I played 4 hours worth of the game last night. Not once did I think about sexism, racism, or any of the isms, or obias, or phobias, right? I didn't think about that. I'm getting lost in the game, right? I didn't think about any of that shit. How can you even say something like this? It's about having a good story, period.
Despite all of that, it often feels like it's barely holding it all together. I suffered numerous crashes, despite having a top-of-the-line setup with the GeForce RTX 4090. Not to mention the multiple...
Okay, I can listen, after our initial impression of it last night, I can kind of get on board with the performance issues. It's kind of all over the place. Well, we had difficulty even starting the game up from Steam, so I can get on board with that part of the review. And that is to its detriment right now. It does have performance issues. It needs a performance patch. We'll see how they address that in the future, but that was a very obvious flaw with the game. On launch, it was pretty rough. It more than made up for it within the first hour. Mitchell Saltzman. All right, Mitchell Saltzman. You're about to, like... I'm about to agree with you, or you're about to really piss me off.
I had to look online to understand who Zhu Bajie was, what his history with Wukong is, and what the significance of certain encounters were.
Oh my god, you actually had to go do some research for yourself. Or maybe there's... Maybe... Hey, here's a wild idea. Given that the game is probably going to be labeled as a success, they want to do a second one. Maybe they don't want to force feed you everything. Fuck, man. Like, give it a chance to breathe.
A literal monkey who wakes up one morning and decides to set out on a roughly 40-hour journey to locate the 6 relics of Wukong.
Right there alone? Right there alone? Yeah, read the descriptions of the items. You might be caught up on some things. No, he probably just breezed through it. But right there alone, he says a 40-hour journey. That means that right there, okay? You work for IGN. You get paid to play video games and review them. Exclusively. If you did it in 40 hours, you probably didn't 100% the game. But I don't know things about it. I kind of want to throw my 2 cents in here with like, my interpretation of this review. I think the term Souls-like needs to go away for most games, okay? While Souls-like is a genre now, we can talk about that, we can discuss that. I don't think this is a Souls-like. I just don't. I don't. If we're going to do that, this game is remarkably more familiar in how linear and semi-open world most of the areas are. The combat is, it's not button mashing, but it's very rudimentary, and there's only so many combos and stuff you can do. Souls-like does not play that way. This is more leaning into the God of War, even Stellar Blade. I didn't even like the fact that people called Stellar Blade Souls-like. Even Final Fantasy 16 was the same way. Semi-open world, most areas were pretty fucking linear. And even the layout, even the UI layout right here is almost exactly the same. Like, how do you can't call Final Fantasy 16 a Souls-like game? Third-person perspective, it checks all the boxes for a hack and slash.
To be clear though, when I say it's more forgiving, I don't mean that it's any less difficult than a From-style game. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that between this and Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, I had more difficulty getting through Wukong's toughest challenges.
Did he just say what I think he said? He didn't say just Elden Ring, he said Shadow of the Erdtree. Are you out of your freaking mind? There's no way you are claiming... There's no freaking way you're claiming that Wukong is more difficult than Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. Now, I haven't reached peak difficulty with this yet. Okay? It plays with a dynamic difficulty. So the better you do, the harder the game gets. There is no way it's harder than Shadow of the Erdtree. What are you even saying? Which game is harder? I will go ahead and definitively say that Elden Ring is harder. And I can say that even only sinking a few hours into Wukong as it is. I can say that because even as a seasoned Souls player, my first few hours in Shadow of the Erdtree were hell. Like, literal hell. And it was for everybody else until we adapted. It was literal hell. The first few hours in this game were a breeze. It was comfortable. It was fun. It felt like a fun type difficulty. There's no way you're making this comparison right now. Imagine saying this in a game where you can freeze bosses in place and then just do DPS to them. You can freeze them in real time. Excuse me?
You also have access to a small handful of spells, governed by a mana meter, that are versatile enough to be useful in a wide array of situations. The Immobilize spell, for instance, freezes enemies for a short time, allowing you to get in some quick hits and potentially stagger them to allow for even more free damage. Cloud Step turns you invisible.
You hear okay, on one hand he just said it's harder than Shadow of the Erdtree, and then he just said you get free damage against any enemy you want. Free. Tell me where anywhere in Shadow of the Erdtree, or Elden Ring for that matter, you get free damage.
Meter.
One thing I highly appreciate from game studios is when they... There used to be this thing back in the day. There's a meme that, out there where... there's like a gaming meme that's out there. I forgot what it is. But it's like when you do the attack... Or wait, when the boss does the attack to you, it does... And it's got like a health bar and it like deletes all the health bar. But when you do the attack, it does nothing, right? So... I feel like studios are finally waking up to the idea that, like, okay, if you're going to, like, take one of the abilities of a boss or something like that, that's one thing I always appreciated about, like, Elden Ring was, like, whatever the enemy does, you get a chance to do it, too, when you acquire their weapon or their skill. So that used to never be a thing. You would get, like, maybe an adaptation of this skill. No, you get the exact thing in this game, which is pretty cool.
However, it's hard not to feel like all of Wukong's splendor and detail came at a great cost. I experienced numerous crashes, with one particular heartbreaker happening right after defeating an extremely tough boss that I then had to defeat again. Several others were more minor and would typically happen as I was loading up a new chapter or fast traveling to another level, but they eventually add up to a lot of frustration. In addition to that, several times during important cutscenes, all dialogue, audio, and subtitles would drop out completely, leaving me without any clue as to what was being talked about and no way to rewatch the cutscene.
Didn't you already say this at the beginning of the video? You got to pay very, very careful attention when a company like this, or like this bozo, does a review. He said a bunch of negative things towards the beginning, right? And then he gave it like the compliment sandwich, but it was the other way around, right? Like he raked the game over the coals, then he gave it some praise, and now he's giving it more criticism. Again, however, He's restating the only criticisms he had in the beginning of the video, so it sounds like he did them twice. So it sounds like the game has more problems than what it really does. But he forgot his own review that he said this already? No shit. Yeah, exactly right. Like, you're just saying the same things that you've already said, but now because you squeezed it twice into one video, if someone didn't catch that, it sounds like it's double the problems.
Carry it through, making Black Myth Wukong
Bro,
a
sneak
great action
dissing
game that could be even greater if game science can squash the bugs.
Bro, sneak dissing Elden Ring? Yeah, man. Like, come on. Come on. There's just no way. The comparison doesn't even need to be there. It's in a class of its own. We know this. We know how good Elden Ring is. But, like I said, my review, my rating is around 7.5 out of 10. But that's due to Rise. I imagine by the time it's done, I'll probably give it like a 9 out of 10. If it continues like getting better and better as I play it, which it was, I don't make like a snap decision, you know? So I had a little bit of trouble even launching the game. And I can look past like performance things and stuff like that. It just, I'm going to see how bad it gets. Hopefully it shouldn't. But to compare it to Elden Ring and say it's more difficult than Shadow of the Erdtree? Hello? Excuse me? No.
And for everything else, keep it here on IGN.
Nope, I'm good. Listen, IGN, okay. That review wasn't terrible. That wasn't terrible. It pales in comparison to like how shit Screen Rant is. That review was really not that terrible. However, can you get somebody in there who is not just trying to throw in like a word salad? Okay? He sounds like an English major, all right? Or he's looking through a thesaurus, trying to find the most complicated. It sounds like his review is written with ChatGPT. It doesn't sound like it's authentic at all, right? That's the problem I have with these people. There's no like genuine reaction, like genuine thought out. Well, it doesn't have to be thought out. It needs to be like first impression. And that's why I'm constantly like reviewing the game as I'm playing it. But that was not as bad as Screen Rant. Like, period. It was not nearly as bad as Screen Rant. I don't know what Screen Rant's doing anyway, reviewing video games. Like, stay in your lane. Stick to being, like, really shitty about reviewing movies. There you go.